Jake Martinez walked through the metal hallways of the starship GFS Harmony with his toolkit in hand and wonder in his eyes. The ship was huge and filled with beings he had only seen in pictures back on Earth. The young human was 22 years old and fresh from the academy. His first real job in space made him both excited and nervous. The engineering department buzzed with activity as alien crew members worked on various systems. Jake tried to stay out of the way while learning his new duties. His supervisor was Veliana, a tall being with crystal-like features and skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. She came from a planet called Nethes, where her people had mastered technology for thousands of years. Veliana looked at Jake with what might have been amusement. Her voice had a musical quality. When she spoke to him about basic maintenance tasks, she gave him simple jobs like checking pressure gauges and cleaning filters. Jake knew she was being gentle with him because humans were new to space traveling. The navigation section, Zarathe, noticed the new human walking past her station. She was an Altarian, with pointed ears and silver hair that flowed like liquid metal. Her people looked similar to the elves from human stories, but they were real and had been exploring space for over 200 years. Zarathe had served on 3 different ships. During her long career, the human looked so young and eager as he fumbled with his tools. Zarathe remembered when the first humans joined the Galactic Federation, everyone thought they were cute, but fragile, like small pets that needed protection. Most species saw humans as good for heavy lifting because of their dense muscles, but not much else. Worked in the communications center. Her blue skin marked her as a Zephyrian, and the small tentacles near her temples showed. She had natural telepathic abilities. She could sense emotions from other beings, which made her good at her job. When Jake walked past her station, she felt his mix of excitement and nervousness. The 3 alien women had become friends during their time on the Harmony. They often met in the recreation area to share meals and talk about their work. All 3 had noticed the new human and found his enthusiasm amusing. He reminded them of a young animal taking its first steps during their meal break. Zarathe brought up an idea that had been forming in her mind. She suggested they play a harmless prank on Jake. As part of his initiation into the crew, many ships had traditions like this, and it would help him feel more included. Exandra used her telepathic abilities to sense that Jake was homesick and trying hard to prove himself. She thought a gentle prank might actually help him bond with the crew. Veliana agreed, since she was supposed to be mentoring him anyway. The plan they created seemed perfect and harmless. They would send Jake to the lower decks to retrieve a tool that did not exist, called a flux capacitor alignment tool. The lower decks had been abandoned for months because the artificial gravity systems. There were unstable ships, like the Harmony, used gravity generators to create Earth-like conditions for the crew, but the lower sections had old generators that sometimes failed or fluctuated wildly. This made it difficult to walk normally, and most crew members avoided the areas. Aretha explained that they could watch through the security cameras as Jake floated around helplessly or stumbled through the changing gravity fields. It would be funny to see the humans struggle with something that seemed so basic to them. They planned to let him search for a while before revealing the joke. The next morning, Veliana called Jake to her workstation. She put on a serious expression and told him about an important assignment that only he could handle. The ship needed a specific tool from storage in the lower decks, and his human strength would be necessary to retrieve it. Jake listened carefully as Veliana described the flux capacitor alignment tool. She said it was about 2 meters long and made of dense metal. She gave him detailed directions to storage room 7 in section 12 of the lower decks. The young human nodded and gathered his equipment. He seemed proud that his supervisor trusted him with such an important task. Veliana felt a small twinge of guilt as she watched him prepare for his mission, but she reminded herself it was just harmless. Jake made his way through the ship. Toward the lower sections, he passed crew members from different species who nodded politely at him. Some gave him curious looks, since humans rarely went to the abandoned areas. The elevator ride down seemed to take forever. As he descended through multiple levels, when the doors opened, Jake stepped into a corridor that felt different from the rest of the ship. The lighting was dimmer, and he could hear the hum of struggling machinery. The first thing he noticed was that his feet felt lighter as the gravity fluctuated back in navigations. Zarathe pulled up the security feeds on her screen. Cassandra and Veliana gathered around to watch their prank unfold. They expected to see Jake stumbling and floating as he tried to navigate the unstable gravity. What they saw instead made them freeze in surprise. Jake moved through the shifting gravity like he was dancing. His steps were perfectly timed with the fluctuations, and he seemed to anticipate each change before it happened. He flowed from heavy gravity to light gravity without missing a beat. The three women watched in growing amazement as Jake navigated obstacles that would have left them helpless. He used walls and ceiling fixtures to guide his movement. When gravity shifted, he even did a graceful flip when the field reversed completely for several seconds. Krextra tried to read his emotions through the cameras, but all she sensed was calm focus. Jake was not struggling or confused. He was completely in control of his movement through the dangerous area. This was not what they had expected. At Alveliana began to worry that their prank had backfired. Jake was supposed to be the clumsy human who needed their help. Instead, he was moving like a trained zero-gravity specialist. She wondered if they had underestimated his abilities. Arathi felt her amusement turning to respect as she watched Jake reach the storage area. He moved with the kind of skill that took years to develop. How could a rookie human be so good at something that challenged experienced space travelers? The three alien women continued watching as Jake began searching through the storage room. They had expected this part to be funny too, since the tool he was looking for did not exist, but Jake seemed to be examining everything with scientific interest, rather than frustration. Known to his watchers, Jake had grown up on Luna Colony, where variable gravity was a daily reality. Earth's moon had artificial gravity systems that were old and unreliable. Children who grew up there learned to adapt to changing conditions as naturally as walking. Jake also suspected this might be a prank, since he had never heard of a flux capacitor alignment tool during his training. But instead of being angry, he decided to play along while investigating some energy readings he had noticed during his ship orientation. As he searched through storage room 7, Jake found something that made him forget all about pranks and tools. Hidden behind some old equipment, he discovered what looked like a crack in the hull. The metal was bent outward, and he could feel a slight breeze that meant air was leaking into space. This was serious. Jake realized the crack was causing the gravity fluctuations as the ship's systems tried to compensate for the pressure loss. If the crack grew larger, it could cause explosive decompression that would endanger the entire crew. Jake immediately began examining the damage more closely. He used his portable scanner to measure the crack and check the surrounding area. What he found made his blood run cold. The crack was spreading slowly but steadily, and would become dangerous within days. Back on their screens, the three women watched Jake's expression change from curiosity to concern. They could see him scanning something, but could not tell what had captured his attention. Zarathe wondered if he had found something wrong with their harmless prank location. Young human began moving with new urgency as he gathered tools and materials from around the storage area. He seemed to have forgotten all about looking for the non-existent flux capacitor alignment tool, and was now focused on something much more important. Cassandra sensed a shift in Jake's emotions from calm to determined. She could feel his growing concern, even through the camera feeds. This was not the reaction they had expected from their simple prank. The three alien women looked at each other with growing unease. Their harmless joke seemed to have turned into something serious. They watched as Jake began working on something they could not see clearly, wondering what their prank had accidentally uncovered. What started as a simple initiation prank was about to become something that would change how everyone on the ship viewed the young human engineer. Jake Martinez was about to prove that humans were far more capable than anyone had imagined. Jake knelt beside the hull crack and felt his training kick in back on Luna Colony. Emergency repairs were common because the old systems failed regularly. He had learned to work fast when lives were at stake. The crack was about 30 centimeters Long and growing, the young human used his scanner to trace the damage pattern. The metal showed stress fractures that extended beyond the visible crack. This was not just a simple hull breach, but a sign of structural weakness that could affect other areas of the ship. On the security monitors, Zarathe squinted at the screen, trying to understand what Jake was doing. He had stopped looking for their fake tool, and was now focused intensely on something near the outer wall. She felt a growing sense that their prank had gone wrong. Somehow Veliona watched Jake pull out various tools from his kit and arrange them methodically beside him. His movements were precise and purposeful, like someone who had done emergency repairs before. This was not the fumbling rookie they had expected to see. Cassandra concentrated on reading Jake's emotions through her telepathic abilities. What she sensed made her stomach tighten. The human was not confused or frustrated as they had planned. Instead, she felt his deep concern and growing determination. Jake began his emergency repair by sealing the immediate air leak. He used a polymer patch from his kit to cover the crack temporarily. The patch would hold for a few hours, but he needed a more permanent solution. The hull breach was just the beginning of a larger problem. The human examined the surrounding structure and found what he feared. The crack was caused by harmonic vibrations that were weakening the entire section. Multiple stress points showed early signs of failure. If nothing was done, the ship could suffer catastrophic damage. Back in the communications center, Cassandra finally spoke up. She told her friends that something was seriously wrong. The emotions she was reading from Jake were those of someone dealing with a real emergency, not someone confused by a prank. Sarath felt her amusement turn to worry. She had chosen the lower decks because they seemed harmless, with just some gravity fluctuations. She never considered that the area might actually be dangerous if Jake was hurt during their prank. She would never forgive herself. Leona made a decision to go check on Jake personally. She told the others to keep watching the monitors while she went down to see what was happening. The elevator ride to the lower decks felt much longer than usual as she worried about what she might find. Meanwhile, Jake was working with incredible speed and efficiency. He had identified 17 critical stress points that needed immediate attention. The hull crack was just the most visible sign of a problem that threatened the entire ship. The human began improvising solutions using materials he found in storage. He took plasma conduits that were being discarded and fashioned them into pressure reinforcement beams. His movements were confident as he worked with tools and techniques his alien crewmates had never seen. When Veliana reached the lower decks, she had to pause and adjust to the fluctuating gravity. She moved carefully through the corridors, wondering how Jake had navigated these conditions so easily. The unstable gravity made every step a challenge for her. She found Jake in storage room 7 working frantically on what looked like major repairs. He had torn apart several storage containers and was using the materials to build some kind of reinforcement system. The hull crack was now clearly visible, and she gasped when she saw it. Jake looked up when Veliana entered, and his expression was serious. He quickly explained what he had discovered and why it was so dangerous. The crack was spreading, and without immediate repairs the entire section could fail. Catastrophic. Haliavels felt ashamed as she realized their harmless prank had accidentally led Jake to discover a life-threatening problem. If he had not been sent here on their fake mission, the crack might have gone unnoticed until it was too late. The crystal-skinned engineer watched in amazement as Jake continued his work. He moved through the unstable gravity like it was nothing while she had trouble just standing still. His repair techniques were unlike anything she had learned in her advanced engineering course. Jake explained his theory about what was causing the structural damage. The ship's new quantum drive created harmonic vibrations that the hull was not designed to handle. The vibrations were slowly weakening the entire structure at multiple points. He showed Veliana his calculations, proving that similar cracks would appear at other locations within months. The entire ship needed to be retrofitted with dampening systems, or they would face repeated hull breaches that could eventually destroy the vessel. Velia tried to contact the bridge to report the emergency, but Jake suggested they wait. He had already begun implementing a temporary solution that would stabilize the area. If they called for help now, it might interrupt his work and make things worse. The human had rerouted power from non-essential systems to boost the local gravity generators. This eliminated the fluctuations that had been stressing the hull. He also installed makeshift atmospheric recyclers to maintain proper air pressure watching. Jake's work was like seeing magic happened. He took broken equipment and spare parts and turned them into functional repair systems. His hands moved with the confidence of someone who had solved similar problems many times before. On the security monitors, Siarthe and Kex watched their colleague join Jake in storage room 7. They could see intense discussion between the two engineers, but could not hear what was being said. The seriousness of the situation was becoming clear. Sandra used her telepathic abilities to sense both Jake and Veliana. From a distance, the emotions she felt were focused determination mixed with growing respect. She realized that their simple prank had revealed something extraordinary about human capabilities. Jake finished his temporary repairs and began testing the systems. The hull crack was now properly sealed and reinforced. The gravity fluctuations had stopped and the air pressure was stable. But this was just the beginning of what needed to be done. He pulled out his portable computer and began running structural analysis programs. The results confirmed his worst fears. The entire ship had similar weak points that would fail over time. The quantum drive was slowly shaking the vessel. Apart, Veliana watched Jake work with growing admiration. His repair techniques were elegant and effective, combining theoretical knowledge with practical experience. She had studied engineering for decades, but had never seen solutions like these. The human explained that his methods came from Earth's earthquake engineering. Humans had learned to design buildings that could flex and adapt to vibrations, rather than just being strong. These same principles could be applied to starship construction. Jake showed Veliana how to install adaptive resonance dampeners, using materials from the ship's recycling systems. The concept was simple, but required precise calculation and careful implementation. It would take days to retrofit the entire vessel. As they worked together, Veliana began to understand that humans brought unique perspectives to problem-solving. Jake saw solutions that her advanced species had missed, not because they were less intelligent, but because they thought differently. The crystal-skinned engineer felt embarrassed about the prank that had brought them here. She had underestimated Jake's abilities and sent him into danger as a joke. Instead, he had potentially saved all their lives by discovering and fixing a critical problem. Jake seemed unaware of how impressive his work was to his alien colleague. He focused entirely on the technical challenges, treating the emergency repairs as just another problem to solve. His casual competence was somehow more remarkable than if he had boasted. The immediate danger was past. Jake finally addressed the original reason for his visit. He asked Veliana about the flux capacitor alignment tool with a slight smile that suggested he knew it had been a prank all along. Veliana felt her face flush with embarrassment as she admitted the tool did not exist. She apologized for sending him into a dangerous area as part of a joke. Jake just laughed and said he was glad because it had led him to find the real problem. The humans suggested they head back to report their findings to the engineering team and the captain. The temporary repairs would hold, but the ship needed extensive modifications to prevent future failures. The work would require the entire crew's cooperation. As they prepared to leave storage room 7, Veliana realized that everything she thought she knew about humans was wrong. Jake was not just strong or eager to please. He was a skilled engineer with innovative solutions to problems her people had not even recognized. The prank that was supposed to embarrass the human rookie had instead revealed his exceptional abilities. Veliana knew that when word spread about Jake's emergency repairs, it would change how everyone on the ship viewed their newest crew member. Walking back through the now stable corridors, Veliana found herself looking forward to working with Jake on the ship modifications. She had learned more about engineering in one morning with him than in months of routine maintenance. The 3 alien women who had planned a harmless initiation prank were about to discover that they had accidentally unleashed something extraordinary. The human they thought needed protection was actually the one who would end up protecting all of them. The journey back to the main decks gave Veliana time to process what she had witnessed. Jake moved through the corridors with easy confidence. While she still felt shaky from the gravity fluctuations that were now gone, his casual competence made her realize how much they had underestimated human abilities. When they reached the engineering section, Jake immediately began gathering more tools and materials. He explained to Veliana that the temporary repairs were just the first step. The entire ship needed systematic modifications to prevent the structural failures he had identified. Other engineering crew members noticed the urgency in Jake's movements. Several aliens approached to ask what was happening. Veliana found herself explaining that the human had discovered a critical flaw in the ship's design that threatened everyone's safety. Word spread quickly through the engineering department that Jake had found and fixed a dangerous hull breach during what was supposed to be a simple supply run. The story grew with each telling until crew members were gathering to see the human who had saved the ship. Jake seemed oblivious to the attention he was attracting. He focused entirely on his calculations and structural analysis. The data showed that 17 different sections of the hull were vulnerable to the same type of failure. The quantum drive's harmonic frequencies were slowly destroying the ship. The young human began sketching modification plans that would retrofit the entire vessel with adaptive dampening systems. His designs were unlike anything the alien engineers had seen before. They combined advanced materials, science, with surprisingly simple mechanical principles. Velia watched Jake work and realized she was seeing true innovation in action. He was not just following established procedures, but creating entirely new solutions. The other engineers gathered around his workspace, drawn by the elegant simplicity of his designs. Captain Sarah received the report about the hull breach and Jake's repairs with initial skepticism. She was a dignified Corvani with reptilian features and had commanded starships for over 40 years. The idea that a human rookie had discovered a fatal flaw that her experienced crew missed seemed unlikely. The captain decided to inspect Jake's work personally. She made her way down to the lower decks, followed by her senior engineering staff. The area that had been abandoned due to gravity problems was now stable and properly pressurized. Captain Sarah examined Jake's temporary repairs with a critical eye. The work was clearly professional quality, but she wanted her own engineers to verify the assessment. The hull breach was real, and the reinforcement work was holding perfectly. Chief Engineer Murdoch ran detailed scans of the repaired section. His equipment confirmed that Jake's assessment was correct. The quantum drive was creating destructive resonance patterns throughout the ship's structure. Multiple hull failures were inevitable without intervention. The captain returned to the main engineering section, where she found Jake surrounded by crew members from different departments. They were all examining his modification plans and asking questions about his proposed solutions. Jake explained his retrofit concept to Captain Sarah with quiet confidence. He showed her how adaptive resonance dampeners could be installed throughout the ship using existing materials and systems. The work would take time, but would make the vessel safer than it had ever been. The captain listened to Jake's presentation with growing respect. His technical knowledge was impressive, but more importantly, his solutions were practical and achievable. He had identified not just the problem, but a realistic way to fix it. Chief Engineer Murdoch examined Jake's calculations and found them mathematically sound. The human's approach was revolutionary because it treated the ship as a living system that needed to flex, rather than just resist stress. This biomimetic approach was beyond current alien engineering. Captain Sarah made the decision to authorize Jake's retrofit project. She promoted him to senior engineering specialist on the spot and gave him authority to requisition whatever materials and personnel he needed. The ship's safety depended on implementing his solutions. Quickly Jake accepted his promotion with the same .com focus he had shown throughout the crisis. He immediately began organizing work teams and assigning specific tasks. The retrofit would require careful coordination between multiple departments. The news of Jake's promotion spread throughout the ship within hours. Crew members who had barely noticed the quiet humans suddenly wanted to know more about him. The story of how he had discovered and fixed a critical flaw became ship legend in the recreation area. Zarathe, Kexalandra and Veliana met to discuss what had happened. Their simple prank had revealed capabilities none of them had imagined possible. They felt embarrassed about underestimating Jake, but also excited about working with him. Veliana described watching Jake work in the emergency situation. His movements had been precise and confident as he improvised solutions using available materials. She had learned more about engineering in one morning than in months of routine work. Exandra shared what she had sensed telepathically during the crisis. Jake's emotions had been focused and determined without any trace of panic or uncertainty. He had treated the life-threatening situation as just another problem to solve. Methodical Azareth admitted that Jake's navigation through the unstable gravity had been the most graceful movement she had ever seen. He had flowed through changing conditions like he was born in space rather than on a planet with stable gravity. The three women realized they needed to apologize to Jake for their prank, even though it had led to discovering the hull breach. They had still sent him into danger as a joke. They decided to approach him together when his work schedule allowed. Meanwhile, Jake was transforming the lower decks into a bustling workshop area. He had identified this section as the ideal location for manufacturing the dampening components. The space was large and had good access to the ship's structural systems. Crew members from different species volunteered to help with the retrofit project. Everyone wanted to contribute to the effort that would make their ship safer. Jake organized them into efficient work teams based on their individual abilities and experience. The human's work ethic quickly became apparent to his volunteers. He maintained focus and energy for hours, while others needed regular breaks. Jake had grown up on Luna Colony, where long work shifts were necessary to maintain the failing life support systems. Dr. Lisa Wong received her first retrofit-related patients within 12 hours of the project beginning. Several alien crew members had injured themselves trying to match Jake's work pace. She began keeping a supply of muscle relaxants and energy supplements ready. Alien physiology was not designed for the sustained effort that humans could maintain. Jake worked 18-hour shifts with only brief rest periods, while his volunteers struggled to keep up. For even half that time, the medical bay began filling with exhausted helpers. Arathi volunteered for the navigation system modifications that were part of Jake's plan. She wanted to make up for the prank and show that she took the project seriously. But after 6 hours of work, her back muscles were screaming in pain. The silver-haired Altarian tried to lift a heavy dampening component the way she had seen Jake handle similar pieces. Her species was strong, but not built for sustained heavy lifting. She pulled a muscle and had to report to medical for treatments. Kextra attempted to use her telepathic abilities to coordinate with Jake's rapid fire problem solving, but found his mind worked too quickly for her to follow. His thought processes jumped between concepts faster than she could track, causing mental fatigue. The blue-skinned Zephyrian had to take frequent breaks to rest her telepathic centers. Jake's mental energy was so intense that prolonged contact was overwhelming. Even brief sessions left her with headaches that required medical attention. V tried to match Jake's work schedule to prove that she could keep up with her new colleague. She managed 14 hours before collapsing from exhaustion. Her crystalline physiology required more rest than human biology apparently needed. Dr. Wang treated a steady stream of volunteer workers who had pushed themselves too hard trying to emulate Jake's stamina. She prescribed mandatory rest periods and work rotation schedules to prevent more serious injuries. The medical bay waiting list grew longer each day as more crew members joined the retrofit project and discovered the limits of their own endurance compared to human capabilities. Jake remained unaware that his normal work pace was causing problems for others. Captain Sarah observed the retrofit progress with amazement. Jake's team was making modifications faster than she had thought possible. The work quality was excellent. Despite the rapid pace, everyone involved seemed energized by the humans' leadership. The captain also noticed the growing number of medical reports related to the project, she realized that Jake's exceptional abilities were causing his helpers to push beyond their normal limits. She decided to implement work restrictions to protect her crew. 3 days after starting the retrofit project, Jake had transformed not just the lower decks, but the entire ship's approach to engineering problems. His innovative solutions and tireless work ethic had inspired everyone to exceed their previous capabilities. The HULL modifications were proceeding ahead of schedule, and the ship was becoming safer with each completed section. Jake's adaptive dampening system was proving more effective than even his calculations had predicted, but the unexpected consequence of the project was filling the medical bay with crew members who had learned the hard way that human stamina and work capacity far exceeded what they had believed possible. The prank that was supposed to embarrass Jake had instead revealed that humans possessed capabilities that made other species seem fragile by comparison. The 3 women who had planned the joke were about to learn just how much they had underestimated their newest crew member. Captain Sarah walked through the lower decks and marveled at the transformation Jake had accomplished in just 3 days. What had been abandoned storage areas were now sophisticated manufacturing workshops filled with precision equipment and organized workstations. The Corvanie captain examined the dampening components being produced by Jake's teams. Each piece was crafted to exact specifications and fitted perfectly into the ship's structural framework. The quality control was better than what major shipyards achieved. Jake was currently working on a particularly complex junction where multiple hull sections met. The mathematical calculations required to properly dampen resonance at this point were staggering, yet he seemed to solve them effortlessly. While directing his work, team's captain, Sarah, approached Jake with her senior staff, including Chief Engineer Murdoch and Science Officer Quintal. They wanted to conduct a formal assessment of the retrofit project and verify that the modifications would actually solve the structural problems. The human looked up from his work with respectful attention as the captain's group arrived. He was covered in metal dust and looked tired, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. Jake gestured toward a large display showing the ship's structural analysis. The screen showed a 3-dimensional model of the Harmony with color-coded stress patterns. Jake explained how the quantum drive's frequency output created standing waves that concentrated destructive energy at specific points throughout the hull. Captain Sarah studied the display with growing understanding. The pattern was clear once Jake pointed it out. The drive's harmonic output was literally shaking the ship apart at its weakest structural joints. His analysis was mathematically flawless. Chief Engineer Murdoch ran independent calculations to verify Jake's assessment. His equipment confirmed that the humans' predictions were accurate. The ship would have suffered catastrophic hull failures within 6 months without the retrofit modifications. Jake activated another display showing the projected results of his adaptive dampening system. The modifications would not just prevent the current problems, but would make the ship stronger and more flexible than its original design. Science Officer Quintel examined the dampening components with scientific instruments. The devices were elegantly simple, yet incredibly effective. They redirected destructive energy into harmless vibrations that actually strengthened the hull joints. The captain asked Jake to explain how he had developed such an innovative solution. The human described growing up on Luna Colony, where seismic dampeners were essential. Technology buildings had to flex with moonquakes or they would crack like eggs. Jake explained that Earth engineers had learned to work with natural forces rather than simply resisting them. Earthquake dampening systems absorbed and redirected energy, instead of trying to create immovable structures. This same principle applied to starships. The concept was so fundamentally different from traditional alien engineering that none of the advanced species had considered it. They focused on making stronger materials and more rigid structures, while humans learned to make flexible adaptive systems. Captain Sarah realized she was witnessing a revolution in engineering philosophy. Jake's approach could be applied to countless other problems. Throughout the galaxy, his solutions were not just fixing their ship but advancing the entire field. Chief Engineer Mordok admitted that Jake's retrofit was superior to the ship's original construction. The adaptive systems would actually improve. With age, as they learned to respond to changing stress patterns, the vessel would become more reliable over time. The captain made several important decisions on the spot. She authorized Jake to expand his team and gave him access to the ship's full manufacturing capabilities. She also requested that he document his techniques for sharing with other vessels. Jake accepted the additional resources with quiet gratitude, but seemed more interested in continuing his work than celebrating his success. He immediately began planning the next phase of modifications that would optimize the entire ship's performance. Word of the captain's formal approval spread throughout the Harmony. Within hours, Jake's retrofit project was now official policy, and every department was expected to cooperate fully. The human had gone from rookie to senior specialist to essential crew member. 3 women who had pranked Jake finally found an opportunity to approach him during one of his rare breaks. They found him in the observation lounge staring out at the stars while drinking coffee. His expression was peaceful, but Thoughtful Sarathi spoke first, apologizing for the prank that had sent him into danger. Her silver hair seemed too dim with embarrassment, as she explained that they had underestimated his abilities and treated him like a helpless child. Extra added her own apology, describing how her telepathic senses had completely misread his capabilities. She had thought he was just eager and naive when he was actually more competent than any of them. Valiana felt the deepest shame because she was supposed to be Jake's mentor. Instead of teaching him, she had learned from him. Her crystalline features seemed to lose their luster as she admitted her failure to recognize his talents. Jake listened to their apologies with patient understanding. He assured them that no harm had been done, and that he had actually enjoyed the challenge of navigating the unstable gravity the prank had led him to discover a serious problem. The human explained that he had suspected the flux capacitor assignment was a joke from the beginning, but had decided to play along while investigating some unusual energy readings. The combination had worked out perfect. Lazarethi asked how Jake had moved so gracefully through the gravity fluctuations when experienced space travelers would have struggled. Jake described growing up on Luna Colony, where variable gravity was a constant challenge. The humans' childhood had been spent learning to adapt to changing conditions that would have been dangerous for most species. Luna's old artificial gravity systems failed regularly, forcing residents to develop exceptional balance and spatial awareness. Realized that what she had sensed as simple emotions in Jake were actually the calm confidence of someone trained from birth to handle emergency situations. His apparent simplicity masked incredibly sophisticated capabilities. Valea asked Jake about his engineering knowledge and where he had learned such innovative techniques. The human explained that Earth's harsh environment had forced humans to develop adaptive solutions to survive. Jake described how Earth's natural disasters had taught his species to build flexible systems that could survive earthquakes, floods, storms, and other chaotic events. This experience translated directly to spacecraft engineering problems. The 3 women began to understand that Jake's abilities were not exceptional for humans, but were typical of his species. Humans had evolved in challenging conditions that required constant adaptation and formation. Captain Sarah made an announcement to the entire crew, praising the retrofit project and Jake's leadership. She emphasized that the modifications would be completed ahead of schedule and would make the Harmony safer than ever before. The captain also announced new work schedule restrictions to protect crew members from overexertion. She had noticed the medical bay filling with volunteers who had pushed themselves too hard trying to match human work capacity. Lisa Wong confirmed that the medical bay had treated more injuries in 3 days than in the previous 3 months. Most cases were exhaustion, dehydration, and muscle strain from crew members attempting to work at Jake's pasta. Doctor explained that human physiology was apparently optimized for sustained effort. In ways that other species were not, Jake could maintain high energy output for extended periods, while aliens needed more frequent rest and recovery. Chief Engineer Mordok updated the crew on the technical aspects of the retrofit project. Jake's adaptive dampening system was exceeding all performance expectations. The ship's structural integrity was improving with each completed modification. The engineering chief admitted that Jake's techniques were teaching the entire department new approaches to problem-solving. The humans' methods combined theoretical knowledge with practical experience in ways that produced superior results. Science Officer Quintel announced that Jake's work would be documented and shared with the Galactic Federation engineering database. The adaptive dampening principles could revolutionize spacecraft design throughout known space. The revelation that humans possessed such exceptional engineering capabilities was spreading beyond just the Harmony. Other ships were requesting copies of Jake's retrofit plans and modification techniques. Captain Syrah realized that first contact with humanity had revealed a species whose abilities far exceeded initial assessments. Humans were not just physically strong, but were innovative problem solvers with unique perspectives. The captain decided to recommend Jake for accelerated promotion and advanced training. His talents were too valuable to waste on routine maintenance tasks. He needed opportunities that matched his exceptional abilities. As the fourth day of the retrofit project began, Jake continued, working with the same steady focus that had characterized his efforts from the beginning. He seemed unaware that he had revolutionized the ship's engineering practices. The three women who had planned a simple prank watched Jake work with new respect and understanding. They had learned that underestimating someone based on preconceptions could lead to missing extraordinary capabilities. The medical bay maintained its waiting list as more crew members volunteered for the retrofit project. Despite the physical challenges, everyone wanted to contribute to Jake's revolutionary improvements to their ship. What had started as a harmless joke had revealed that humans brought unique and valuable capabilities too. The galactic community. The prank had backfired in the best possible way by uncovering talents that would benefit everyone. 7 days after the retrofit project began, the medical bay had established a formal waiting system for crew members seeking treatment. Dr. Lisa Wang had never seen anything like the current situation in her 15 years as a ship's physician. The human doctor reviewed her patient logs with amazement. Most cases were still exhaustion and overexertion from crew members attempting to match Jake's work pace. Some aliens had pushed themselves so hard they required extended bed rest or die. Returned to medical for the third time. With muscle strain in her lower back, the Altarian had been determined to prove she could handle the heavy lifting required for hull modifications. Her silver hair was dull with fatigue. Der Wang examined Zarathaean prescribed rest muscle relaxants and a strict prohibition against lifting anything heavier than her food tray. The navigation officer's pride had led her to attempt tasks beyond her species' physical capability. Skaxkrand occupied a recovery bed suffering from telepathic overload. She had tried to maintain mental contact with Jake during complex calculations, but his rapid thought processes had overwhelmed her neural pathways. The Zephyrian's blue skin had lost its healthy glow, and her telepathic tentacles hung limply. Dr. Wang administered neural stabilizers and ordered complete mental rest for 48 hours. No telepathic contact with anyone, especially Jake. Valiana was the most serious case. She had collapsed after attempting to work a 20-hour shift to match Jake's schedule. Her crystalline features had actually started to crack from the stress. Her species required precise rest cycles to maintain their unique physiology. Derwang placed Valiana in a specialized healing chamber that would slowly repair the stress fractures in her crystal matrix. The process would take several days and the engineer would need weeks of reduced activity afterward. Other patients filled the remaining beds. Chief Engineer Mordok was being treated for dehydration after forgetting to take water breaks while trying to keep up with Jake's project pace. His reptilian species needed more frequent hydration than human. Science Officer Quintel suffered from optical strain after staring at technical displays for hours without rest. Her large eyes were designed for low-light conditions, but she had pushed them beyond their limits. Studying Jake's complex calculations, the medical bay's waiting area was full of crew members with similar conditions. Everyone wanted to contribute to the retrofit project, but their biology could not sustain the effort levels that Jake maintained. Naturally, Durwong established mandatory shift rotations to prevent further injuries. No one was allowed to work more than 8 hours without a break, and 12 hours maximum per day. These restrictions applied to everyone except Jake, who seemed immune to fatigue. The human engineer continued his 18 to 20-hour work schedule, with only brief rest periods. He showed no signs of the exhaustion that was affecting his volunteers. Jake seemed genuinely puzzled when told about the medical bay situation. Captain Sarah visited the medical bay to assess the situation. She found it filled with her best crew members, all recovering from trying to match one human's work capacity. The irony was not lost on her. The captain realized that Jake's exceptional abilities were creating an unexpected problem. His volunteers were pushing themselves to dangerous limits, trying to prove they could equal his performance. No one wanted to appear weak compared to the human rookie. Durwong briefed Captain Sarah on the medical situation. She recommended implementing stricter work limitations and mandatory health monitoring for anyone working on Jake's team. The current injury rate was unsustainable. Sarah made the decision to speak with Jake directly about the problem. She found him in the lower decks, installing the final dampening components for Section 12. His work area was perfectly organized, and his movements remained precise. Despite days of intensive labor, the captain explained the medical situation to Jake, and watched his expression change from focus to concern. The human had been so absorbed in his work that he had not noticed the physical toll on his volunteers. Jake immediately offered to slow down his work pace to match his team's capabilities. He seemed genuinely distressed that his colleagues were injuring themselves trying to keep up with him. The human's concern for others was touching. Captain Sarah assured Jake that slowing down was not necessary, but that work rotations would be mandatory. She explained that different species had different physical limitations, and that Jake's capabilities were apparently exceptional even by human standards. The captain also informed Jake that his retrofit project was being studied by engineering teams throughout the fleet. Other ships wanted to implement similar modifications based on his innovative techniques. His work was revolutionizing spacecraft design. Jake accepted this news with the same quiet humility he had shown throughout the project. He seemed more interested in completing the current work than in fame or recognition. His focus remained on practical problem-solving. The retrofit project reached completion on schedule despite the work restrictions. Jake's adaptive dampening system was fully installed and operational. The ship's structural integrity had improved by over 300%. Testing showed that the Harmony could now handle stress loads that would have destroyed the original design. The quantum drive's harmonic vibrations were completely neutralized and actually contributed to the hull's strength. Chief Engineer Murdoch issued a final report praising Jake's work and recommending the techniques for fleet-wide implementation. The human's innovations had solved problems that had plagued spacecraft design for centuries. Captain Sarah held a ceremony to recognize Jake's contributions to ship safety. She promoted him to Chief Engineering Specialist and recommended him for advanced command training. His talents were too valuable to waste. The 3 women who had originally pranked Jake attended the ceremony with mixed feelings. Their simple joke had revealed capabilities that put their own skills in perspective. Zarathe was still recovering from her back injury. Valena remained in the medical bay healing chamber, but watched the ceremony through the ship's communication system. Her crystal matrix was slowly repairing, but she would need weeks to fully recover from her overexertion. Sekret attended despite still suffering headaches from telepathic overload. She had learned to respect the power of human mental energy and would be more careful about psychic contact in the future. Jake accepted his promotion and commendation with characteristic modesty. He thanked his team for their hard work and dedication, while avoiding any mention of his own exceptional contribution. The ceremony was BROADCAST, throughout the ship and recorded for transmission to fleet headquarters. Jake's story was already becoming legendary among spacecraft crews. The human who had turned a simple prank into a life-saving discovery. Dr. Wang provided medical statistics, showing that the retrofit project had resulted in the highest injury rate in ship history, but all injuries were minor and recovery was complete. She recommended new safety protocols for future projects. The medical bay's waiting list finally cleared as the last volunteers recovered from their overexertion. Most crew members now had a healthy respect for human work capacity and were more realistic about their own limitations. Captain Sarah updated the ship's personnel database with new information about human capabilities. The initial assessment of humans as strong but simple had been completely wrong. Jake had proven that humans were innovative problem solvers with exceptional endurance. The captain also sent a report to fleet headquarters recommending that human crew members be given more challenging assignments. Their abilities were being wasted on routine tasks when they could be solving complex engineering problems. Jake returned to his normal duties. With his new rank and responsibilities, he continued working his usual long hours, but now had assistants who worked in rotation to avoid overexertion. The medical bay remained prepared for future human-led projects. The lower decks, where the prank had originally sent Jake, were now a showcase of adaptive engineering. The area that had been abandoned due to gravity problems was now the most stable and well-equipped section of the ship. 3 weeks after the retrofit completion, the Harmony encountered a severe space storm that would have seriously damaged the original hull. Design. Jake's modifications allowed the ship to flex and adapt to the chaotic forces. The crew watched in amazement as their ship rode out the storm. With only minor stress readings, the adaptive dampening system automatically adjusted to counter the changing forces, keeping everyone safe and comfortable. Captain Sarah realized that Jake's work had not just fixed their current problems, but had prepared them for unforeseen challenges. The humans' engineering philosophy of adaptation, rather than resistance, was proving superior in every situation. The 3 women who had pranked Jake met regularly to discuss what they had learned from the experience. Their assumptions about human capabilities had been completely overturned by one young engineer's extraordinary performance. Azarath admitted that Jake's grace, invariable gravity, had been the most beautiful movement she had ever witnessed. His adaptation to changing conditions was like watching a master artist work with 3-dimensional space. Cassandra described Jake's mental energy as unlike anything she had encountered through telepathy. His thought processes operated on multiple levels simultaneously, creating solutions faster than she could. Veliana spoke about Jake's engineering techniques with professional admiration. His combination of theoretical knowledge and practical experience had taught her more than years of formal education. The prank that was supposed to embarrass the human rookie had instead revealed that humans possessed capabilities that made other species seem limited by comparison. Jake had proven that first impressions could be completely wrong. The medical bay maintained expanded capacity and additional supplies in case future human crew members joined the ship. Dr. Wang had learned that human physiology required different assumptions about work capacity and endurance. Jake continued his duties unaware that he had revolutionized how the crew viewed his entire species. He focused on each day's challenges with the same methodical competence that had characterized his emergency repairs. The story of the prank that backfired spread throughout the fleet, becoming a cautionary tale about underestimating others based on preconceptions. Jake's name became synonymous with innovative problem-solving and human potential. Captain Sarah received commendations for recognizing and promoting Jake's talents. Her ship was now considered a model for integrating human crew members effectively. The Harmony had become a flagship for interspecies cooperation. The retrofit project's success led to Jake being requested for consultation on other ships. His techniques were being studied and adapted throughout the fleet. Human engineering philosophy was changing how problems were approached. The Three alien women learned that their harmless prank had accidentally uncovered one of the most significant discoveries in recent galactic history. They had revealed that humans were not just strong helpers, but were innovative leaders. The medical bay's waiting list had become a symbol of what happened when other species tried to match human capabilities without proper understanding of the differences everyone could end up needing. Medical attention. Jake's story proved that sometimes the best discoveries come from unexpected situations. A simple prank had revealed talents that would benefit the entire galactic community for generations to come.